Yeah. Okay. And it was going to be like exorbitant. So yeah. We'll look it up.
I thought the
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 3rd Council Committee meeting. My name is Stephanie Meyer, Council President and a Council member from Ward 3, and I will be chairing this meeting. Besides myself, the committee members here tonight are Matt Zimmerman, Ward 1, Jim Neighbor, Ward 1, Eric Jenkins, Ward 2, Lisa Larson-Bonnell, Ward 3, Nikki Sandifer, Ward 4, Lindsay Constance, Ward 4, and Mike Hemling from Ward 2 is absent. Before we begin our agenda, I'd like to explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input. If you would like to speak to the committee at any of those times, please go to the podium. I will ask that you state your name and address for the record, and then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear you, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone, and by policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes. Comments and remarks that are personal, impertinent, or slanderous will not be permitted, and disruptive acts are also not permitted. After you're finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. There are 4 items on tonight's agenda. The first is an update on Tobacco 21. The Tobacco 21 campaign is a regional initiative to raise the age to purchase tobacco products from 18 to 21. To date, 31 local governments in the region have passed such laws, including 11 here in Johnson County. Senior Vice President Scott Hall with the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce will make a presentation. Come on up, Scott. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Councilwoman Meyer. Thank you, members of the council. It's my honor to be able to present this information to you tonight. Certainly happy to answer any questions, and I'm going to go through some of my information a little bit quickly because I think you all have had the chance to review some of it. And we have 2 guests here with us tonight, Alyssa Canning, who is a sophomore at Mill Valley High School, and Hannah Silverstein, who is a senior at Shawnee Mission West, who can add some additional perspective. Frankly, I'm too old to add. Tobacco 21 KC is a regional effort, as the councilwoman mentioned, to raise the age for purchase and sale of tobacco products and alternative nicotine delivery systems from 18 to 21. As was mentioned, this has happened in a number of cities and counties, unincorporated counties throughout the region. I'll show you a map here shortly about what that looks like today. I probably don't need to articulate this, but using tobacco products, including alternative nicotine delivery systems, can be hazardous to your health. Not just hazardous to those who use, but to those who love those who use and those who pay into our public healthcare systems. You can see some of the numbers up there on the screen in front of you right now. And what's increasingly fact-based to us is that the age at which you begin to use tobacco or even alternative nicotine delivery systems is increasingly correlated to whether or not you become a lifelong and committed smoker. So if you have not started by age 18, or certainly by age 24, you are very unlikely to become someone who is a lifelong tobacco user. In 2018's National Youth Tobacco Survey, a new focus was put on electronic cigarettes. You will hear a little bit about these devices this evening, specifically the Juul devices that have become so popular among young people here in Shawnee and throughout the Greater Kansas City metro area. There was a 78% increase in that one single year among high school students in e-cigarette use, a 48% increase among middle school students, and an increase in overall tobacco use, reversing what really was a decades-long decline in tobacco use among young people. Here you can see that data shown graphically. I know it's hard to see the numbers, but essentially what you're looking at on the left side of this graph is the usage of traditional cigarettes, tobacco by teens, and on the other side, the use of e-cigarettes by the same demographic, shown year over year from 2011 to 2019. Again, a dramatic spike in e-cigarette use, while you see a pretty steady decline in traditional cigarette use, but there are some changes in that you can see there in 2017 to 2018, and there is some correlation, many researchers believe, to the spike in e-cigarette use that's happened over that correlating period of time. Only 6% of teens attribute using electronic cigarettes to an attempt to quit using traditional tobacco products. What we know is that teens are using these products at increasingly high rates, and that is often becoming a gateway to using traditional tobacco. You'll notice the last bullet on this slide, 66% of teens surveyed believe there is just flavoring in e-cigarettes. I can assure you that for most of the products that you see teens using, that is not the case. There is nicotine in almost every, and really probably every device that's being used by teens here in Shawnee, along with other toxic chemicals they're putting into their body. They are not very aware of what those chemicals are. Here you see a slide that shows some alternative nicotine delivery system devices. These devices are each made to look like something that you would see in the pocket or on the body of a normal child, a normal high school student at Shawnee Mission West or Mill Valley High School. That is not an inhaler, that is not a writing pen, that is not an Altoids box, that is actually not a hooded sweatshirt. The drawstrings you see around the hoodie are a vaping device made to look like a hooded t-shirt or hooded sweatshirt. And that black marker you see is not actually a black marker at all. That is an e-cigarette. What we know and what you're going to hear tonight from some of the experts is that increasingly kids are clever in how they mask using alternative nicotine delivery systems, specifically Juuls, but other devices as well. They make them look like other things that we see them use, but they are in fact delivering nicotine or at times other chemicals to those kids. So specifically, the Juul device is the one that you see and hear the most about in high schools and unfortunately middle schools and even in some cases elementary schools. What's really interesting is that we have been at work on this project, as Councilwoman Meyer mentioned, for a number of years, and it was this article that alerted many of the folks in our group, some of whom are some of this region's most renowned tobacco cessation experts, about the dangers of Juul. This article appeared in the Harbinger, which is the Shawnee Mission East High School newspaper, titled Hidden Juul, in the spring of 2017. And if you refer back to a couple of slides before, you will note that since this article has been published, there's been an enormous spike in teen usage, high school usage rates, among this device in particular. And a Juul, if you've not seen one, looks just like a flash drive, which can be inserted into a laptop computer, just like the one that I have in front of me, that some of you have in front of you. It, to a teacher, to an administrator, to a principal, is imperceptibly different from a flash drive. It can be withdrawn and actually charged in a flash drive, withdrawn and used in class. What makes it especially challenging is there is no scent in most cases. So it can be used, it has been used, it is being used in class during instruction time. It is frequently used in the bathrooms in high schools here locally, in between classrooms or in between classes. I think you're going to hear a couple of stories about that this evening. But it is increasingly hard for school administrators to govern the use of these devices because they are so covert. I won't get into too much of this. I think you had an earlier presentation on this, but what science is telling us is increasingly nicotine is destructive to the young brain. That's part of the reason why you see lifelong usage patterns so much higher among those who start young. Truly what is happening is that when you use at a young age, your brain is being rewired. And you're being rewired not just to be more addicted to nicotine, but to be more addicted to just about anything you can think of. Alcohol, illicit drugs, and other things. That's why what we're talking about when we talk about Tobacco 21 is the delay in initiation. That's why you see such a short-term impact to business, but such a long-term impact to usage. In Kansas, we smoke and use electronic cigarettes at rates that exceed the national average, both among youth and teens, as well as among adults. And I'll tell you quickly the story of the first community in the country that passed Tobacco 21. It's a city called Needham, Massachusetts, and it's really not all that different than Shawnee. It is located within the greater Boston MSA. It is surrounded on all sides by suburbs within the greater Boston MSA. When they passed Tobacco 21, they saw a 46% decrease in teen smoking in 5 years. What's interesting is if you control that for the other communities surrounding them that did not pass a similar law, it exceeded their decrease in teen smoking by 26%. So here is a map showing Needham in red. The other 16 communities for which they measured teen smoking over that 5-year period are shown in yellow. So just to hit this point home, Needham, Massachusetts had Tobacco 21, but a teen in Needham, an 18-year-old in Needham, a 19-year-old in Needham, a 20-year-old in Needham could still go to Wellesley or Dover or Dedham or Westwood or Newton or Boston to get tobacco products during that period of time. And despite that, they saw a 26% larger decrease in tobacco usage rates than did any of those communities you see in yellow shown there. So some of you may be asking yourselves, why is someone from the Chamber of Commerce coming to talk to us about tobacco cessation? This is why. $5,816 is the average cost to a private employer for every person they employ who uses tobacco every year. And what's interesting about this is you can see that some of the costs that you would expect to see on there are on there. Excess healthcare costs of $2,000 more, smoke breaks costing the employer $3,000 a year, but also absenteeism. You are more frequently missing work if you are using tobacco products, and presenteeism, which is the ability to focus on your work and be productive while you're in the workplace. What's really interesting to note is that last number, which you'll see we've put in parentheticals, and if anyone's really good at fast math, you notice that the first 4 numbers there add up to greater than $5,816, because that last number is a pension benefit, is actually credited back against this number because you don't pay as much in pension benefits to those who use tobacco because they die sooner. Here are some other statistics brought to us by the American Heart Association related to the cost of tobacco in the workplace. I won't spend too much time on this. You can imagine whether you're Cerner or Hallmark Cards or a 3-person employer here in Shawnee, tobacco and the cost of tobacco on your workforce are real. And if you're Hallmark or Cerner, it's millions of dollars, but to us, the Chamber, it's just as important if you're a 3-person shop and it's thousands of dollars, because that's real money to real businesses. As was mentioned, this is an initiative that's been around for some time and has really gained a tremendous amount of traction, both here locally and nationally. There are more than 500 communities in 30 states and more than 175 million people that now live in Tobacco 21 communities across the United States. And here you can see a map of the greater Kansas City metro. The areas you see in dark blue are areas that are now Tobacco 21 communities. You may not be able to read the number at the bottom of that page, but it's 1,521,625 people of the about 2.1 million in the greater Kansas City metro MSA that are now living in Tobacco 21 communities. Honestly, this map is outdated because we can't update this map fast enough. We had a community pass last week that will be added to this map shortly, bringing us to, on this map, in what we consider the MSA, 32 communities in the greater Kansas City metro that are now Tobacco 21 communities. We have begun gathering data around the impact to our community around the passage of T21. And I won't go through all this. We don't have enough time to go through it in detail today. But I will tell you that what we are seeing is that this is having a meaningful impact in our communities. Those areas in which Tobacco 21 is passing are seeing decreasing rates in traditional tobacco usage that exceed those that are not passing it. And finally, I'll share this. This is the most recent research I've seen from a journal called Nicotine and Tobacco Research, which pretty clearly, the entirety of the article pretty clearly summarizes the effectiveness of Tobacco 21 policies in reducing the number of youth who are initiating tobacco usage. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask Alicia and Hannah to come up and see if they would share their stories Alyssa, you want to go first? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Alyssa Canning, and I am a member of the Executive Statewide Teen Tobacco Resistance Committee called Resist. I attend Mill Valley High School, where I am a sophomore. Though I have only attended high school for 2 years, I have seen my fair share of tobacco use among teens. Freshman year, I remember walking into the bathroom and seeing large groups of girls crammed into the handicap stall and immediately being hit with a wave of pungent fruity odor as soon as I walked in, also known as e-cig vapor. Another common thing I've seen is vapes being present at parties and common hangouts. The big question are, where are these teens getting these products? The city of Shawnee is one of the last municipalities in Kansas that allows 18-year-olds to purchase tobacco products, including cigars, cigarettes, and the most popular e-cigarettes. 18-year-olds, not even allowed to purchase liquor, are allowed to buy products containing hundreds of chemicals and other harmful contaminants that we don't even know the full effects of yet. However, these 18-year-olds end up selling devices to teens younger than them, giving kids as young as 11 here in Shawnee access to products that could potentially kill them. Do we really want the kids of our city poisoning themselves with the chemicals of which they can't even pronounce the name? Do we really want the kids of our city so addicted to the toxic nicotine that they can't even go a day without hitting their vape? I believe that we need to take a stand and raise the age of which one can purchase tobacco products to 21 so that fewer children around our city have access to harmful devices that we don't even know the full effect of yet. This may not solve all our problems with youth e-cig use, but it will help keep products out of high schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So my name is Hannah Silverstein. I'm a resident of the nearby city of Lenexa, and I'm currently a senior at Shawnee Mission West High School in Overland Park. So I'm here to represent a group called the Teen Task Force of Johnson County, which is comprised of teens all over the Johnson County area who volunteer their time to raise awareness concerning teenage mental health, prevent drug and alcohol abuse in teens, and also raise awareness concerning youth suicides. So I'm specifically here to express my support for Tobacco 21. So the nearby municipalities have Tobacco 21, so I know personally at my school, 18-year-olds, seniors in high school will come to Shawnee and they will buy tobacco products, specifically vapes for younger students, freshmen, sophomores, 14, 15-year-olds, because they go to the same school. So if you were to raise the age, it would help restrict access to those younger people. And why this is such a problem is that, as we're seeing, there's a vaping epidemic going all across the nation. Younger kids are getting access to these harmful products, and they're starting to get addicted sooner and sooner. And once they get addicted, they'll stay addicted and could possibly get addicted to more harmful drugs and even alcohol. Not only are they getting addicted, but also we're seeing more and more medical-related illnesses to vaping pop up. I see on the news every week students my age, 16, 17-year-olds, being hospitalized for lung-related illnesses linked to vaping, such as having lung failure and having to get double lung transplants, which is horrible for someone as young as me. Also at my school, the way I've seen addiction is we've had to close down the bathrooms at my school during lunch because people won't stop vaping. I know a student in my school told me how they dropped their Juul, the vaping device, in the school toilet, fished it out, and still used it. So if that's not a nicotine addiction, then I don't know what is. And one Juul pod does have roughly about 1 pack's worth of a cigarette's amount of nicotine, and some kids smoke more than 1 pack a day, so that's extremely harmful. So coming from a student who lives in a nearby city of Shawnee and in the area of Johnson County, I think it would be in the best interest of all the young people in the Johnson County area that you raise the age of selling tobacco from 18 to 21 because it's in our best interest and it'll protect our health. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. We have some other folks who are experts who are here with us tonight who may share some thoughts during public comment, but we're happy to take any questions from the council.
Okay. Thank you, Scott, and Hannah and Alicia. Thank you. Any questions from the council? Eric?
Yes. Just one question. You showed some numbers there, 78% increase in high school vaping and 48% in the middle schools. Sounds like a significant issue down at the schools, but we're not really focusing on the schools and what's going on down there in the 18 and below. We're looking at the 18 to 21 group and accusing them basically of being the problem and causing this issue. And that gives me a little bit of concern that we single out this group who are, they're not just 18 to 21 year olds, they're adults, according to the law. Mm-hmm. They can go to war, get their legs blown off, they can get blinded. Well, we have quite a few of those actually, because the age of the IED has been really interesting. And just for the record, I spent 34 years in the United States Army and Army Reserve. So I have worked with an awful lot of 18 to 21 year olds during that time as their commander. And I found most of these young men and women to be pretty sharp, pretty capable of taking care of themselves. We actually want to make a split-second decisions in combat as whether to engage an enemy or not, because of whether, you know, it is a bad guy or it isn't a bad guy. We put all kinds of pressure on these young people and expect them to perform under some pretty difficult standards. And I also noticed that they get the right to vote. And those are some of the most important things we do. Vote and select our leaders. They're okay to do that. Mm-hmm. They're okay to go there and defend our country. They're okay to help build our communities and go out and work in the workforce. But somehow they can't make a decision on vaping or whatever. And I'm not saying I'm happy about vaping. I don't like it. And I don't like cigarettes. But I'm talking about some basic human rights here. And are these guys entitled to their rights or not? And that's where I'm having the heartburn. I wish all smoking would go away, quite frankly. That'd be great. Take the drinking with it and take the gambling with it and all that stuff, because all those things come back to haunt and hurt people. You know, you look at what are the health issues. You mentioned obesity. Oh, we're going to legislate you can't be fat? Nobody in this town can eat over 1,600 calories per day? Maybe everybody's got to go exercise at least an hour. I guess our fitness companies would love that, so they could do a booming business, but I don't think we're going to be able to legislate that either. So I'm just trying to look at this from a practical standpoint. I mean, really, to go out and regulate a specific group of people and deprive them of their rights seems inherently unfair and inequitable in the system we live in a democratic society. So that's causing me problems, causing me a great deal of heartburn. You know, I wish you well on what you're doing, because I really don't, like I say, I don't like the vaping, and I don't like the smoking, and I don't like our kids doing this. But it's a reality. I remember being 18 years old, well, that was a long time ago, but I do still remember it faintly. And gosh, everybody smoked cigarettes in high school, and they were, never had any trouble getting a six-pack of beer if you wanted one, even though it was illegal. And it's kind of hard to legislate some of these types of things. I know we tried with alcohol, and that didn't seem to work very well with the prohibition. I finally had to say that this doesn't work. I don't know. It just, maybe I'm being a libertarian of sorts. Yeah, I guess I am being a libertarian at the moment. But, yeah, I don't see how I can support this, even though I support what the goal is. I don't think I have the right to deprive these young people of their rights. So that's where I stand on it.
Lisa?
Just a really quick point of order. Are we going to have a chance to have council discussion after public comment?
Yes, thank you for that. So the plan is we'll take more questions for Scott if you all have them, then we'll open it up for public comment and come back for council discussion at that point. Are there any other questions for Scott? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Staff is seeking direction on this item. It is a policy decision for the governing body. If the council committee wishes to proceed, the recommendation would be to direct staff to prepare an ordinance to bring back to the governing body for consideration. Again, before we get into council discussion, I would ask if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item. All right. I think I saw Ray first. If you'll come up and state your name and address for the record.
Ray Ehrlichman, 7510 Garnett Street. I might be one of those people that Councilmember Jenkins was just talking about. 29th of October, 1964, 2 months after my 17th birthday. I just gave away my age. I took the oath of office to enter the United States Army. The next day, I was down at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and at the ripe old age of 17, I was being taught how to kill. With a rifle, with a bayonet, either affixed to the rifle or used as a stabbing weapon, and very limited martial arts, but some basic hand-to-hand. But according to these folks, not old enough to determine if I want to smoke a cigarette. January 1967, 19 and a half years old, the airplane landed at Benoit Air Base. So I was old enough to be in combat, in a combat zone, but not old enough to make a decision on how to smoke? No, that's wrong. What about somebody that's at Fort Riley, which is a combat post, comes back from Iraq and Afghanistan? He can buy cigarettes, or she can buy cigarettes on post. Comes in to visit a friend in Shawnee and forgot to bring enough packs with him. Now they can't go to the Quick Trip to buy one, if this is passed in Shawnee. That's wrong. Let's take it a step further. There are other things that you might want to consider changing the age on. The state of Kansas has an age of consent of 16. Well, let's talk about what that means. That means at 16, a young man and a young woman can have consensual sexual relations, and that's exactly what it means, which can become a pregnancy. But they're not old enough to decide if they want to smoke, if you listen to these people. And while engaging in that, they can pass on various diseases. We don't like talking about it. It's not something we sit around the dinner table talking about, but it's a fact of life. I could sit here and enumerate all the diseases, but I don't want anybody going into the restroom and puking. But we all know what they are. So at 16, people can do that. But they're not old enough to make a decision as to whether or not they want to smoke. Personally, I don't care how many other cities in Johnson County in the metro area have passed this. I think it's hypocritical. I think government agencies have to get out of personal lives. There's too much of it. I think that, as Councilmember Jenkins said, at 18, people are old enough to decide who's going to be president of the United States, but not old enough to decide if they want to smoke a cigarette. That's wrong. And if this is pursued here in Shawnee, my personal opinion is that it's wrong, for the reasons that I've just stated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Yep, if you'll come up and state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Whichever you prefer. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, they even have pens up there.
Yeah. Emmett Monslow, 10909B, Shawnee Mission Parkway, Leoli, Hookah. I'm a local tobacco business that has catered to that 18 to 20-year-old market for young adults. A great example from what the gentleman had said. People who come from Fort Riley, I get people from Leavenworth, I get people from all over to enjoy a relaxing environment and a tobacco product that is more socially used. My argument is obviously against tobacco 21, and I'm not so much worried about the 18. I think everybody can agree that anybody who is still developing under the age of 18 should not have access to tobacco. I hate cigarettes personally. I own a hookah lounge. I feel like the media has overplayed the seriousness of the deaths. It is not vape related. It is the stuff that your people are getting on the street. The THC, it is vitamin E acetate, which is what they use to cut the product. So what we're going to do by limiting kids, when I say kids because the ones that are under 18, to go to somebody named Bob, who's in his 30s, and who's going to sell them their fruity juice, and he's going to go to little Timmy, and Timmy's going to be like, hey, you got anything besides Fruity Pebbles? And then he's like, yeah, I got this stuff that'll make you feel really good. So now we're forcing our kids to do something that they're still going to get it. We're not going to stop it. We're not going to stop kids from getting alcohol. There are things that you cannot prevent. All we're going to do is punish adults. But then little Timmy goes and gets his stuff. He smokes that vape pen that has THC in it, not regular vape, which is what the media is making out. I sent an email to you all about how the CDC said that it is related to vitamin E acetate. It is not the vape juice. You can go down to Flatland Vapes down here on Neiman, and you can buy any of their products, and it's not going to kill you. It is a flavored tobacco, or it is a flavored inhaler with nicotine, and you can purchase without nicotine. So you're going to cause little Timmy to have lung failure because he's buying his stuff off the black market. I have went to the schools in Overland Park, Shawnee Mission North yesterday, and I talked to the administrator and I talked to the SROs. The SRO says, look, we switched this a year and a half ago and we haven't even seen a decrease in tobacco use. They rarely get regular tobacco cigarettes. The vape is definitely an issue, they said, but it has not decreased even them switching to 21 tobacco. All that's doing is putting our morals, what we think is right for the younger people, and saying, hey, look, we have a power of authority, and we're going to tell you you can't do this. But you can do other things. You can go to war. I was in the Army myself. You can vote, you can die for your country, but you can't make a decision. You're not smart enough to make a decision on what you can put into your body. If I want to go to McDonald's, I can go to McDonald's. That'll kill me faster than cigarettes. Well, not necessarily cigarettes, just tobacco, vape. I'll say vape. But yeah, so nobody is sitting here arguing against limiting the access to minors. I know a guy, let me tell you a personal story here, in Missouri. Most of Kansas City, Missouri is, they've already switched to Tobacco 21 through the efforts of, Tobacco KC. There's a guy that bragged to me in his 30s that said, hey, I make $3,000 a week selling to these kids. By putting this law into effect, you're not going to stop that. They're going to the people that you're creating a forbidden fruit effect. And so what all this does is limit the people who should be able to make that decision for themselves. And you're basically saying, hey, no, we know better than you. You can't do this. But hey, go die for us. And I think that's disappointing because we are not the arbiters, and I say we as in the people who elect the officials for the city of Shawnee. We do not elect them to be authoritarian and decide what is best for us in regards to extracurricular activity or something such as if we want to put harmful things into our body. I'm also a libertarian. I kind of stand with Mr. Jenkins, Councilmember Jenkins. And the other thing, too, I will say is that this Tobacco 21 will not do anything because these young kids, they understand technology. You can go on Amazon. I did it in 5 minutes. It's about the amount of time that I'm up here talking. I could go and I can order, I can put a fake address, I can put a fake name in and a fake date of birth and have it shipped directly to my house. The other part that we have on this is that it sounds like we want to limit school usage. That seems to be the overall thing. And I get that. But you have parents that are providing the products to their kids. I had talked to one of the school resource officers at Shawnee Mission North, and he had told me that, yeah, we had a kid that was buying it, or his dad was buying it for him, and they were selling it at the school to other kids, and then they were going and splitting the money. His dad's in his 40s. So no matter what you're going to do, you're not going to stop the problem. I think we should focus more on what will actually work, which is the punishment. Those who are abusing the system, those who are providing the tobacco products to minors, whether right now it's a $200 fine if you give, not even just sell, but if you give to a minor. If we're looking to really decrease the usage amongst the school, the school children, increase that fine where we hit them in the pocket, because $200, if they're making $3,000 a week, they're like, all right, cool, I got caught once, I'll just continue doing this because it's profitable.
And so you are at your 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. We only get 5, they get 15. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Jamie, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Jamie Borgman. I live at 14818 West 74th Court in Shawnee. I guess I'm hearing the discussion about soldiers needing and wanting tobacco products, and I guess I'm here to speak kind of for the greater good, in my opinion. The fact that we're having this discussion to ban the sale of tobacco products for young adults under the age of 21, quite frankly, baffles me a little. I feel like I've stepped back in time to have this discussion here tonight. This ban really should have been passed years ago. I want to be proud of the city that I've chosen to raise my 3 children. This makes me cringe. I work for an oncology company that specializes in treating metastatic lung cancer patients. Today, right now, there are countless metastatic lung cancer patients fighting to live to see Christmas. I invite you, come to work with me tomorrow, any of you, and you can hear directly from patients hanging on to dear life as a direct result of their nicotine addiction. Additionally, I was recently elected to the Shawnee Mission School Board. My campaign motto was fighting for all kids. Tonight, I'm here to fight for all kids. Despite strict rules about prohibiting tobacco products in schools, you have to be living under a rock if you haven't heard about the rampant usage of vapes in school. And I thank you to our brave teenagers who spoke to that effect tonight. Awesome job. Very impactful, and I thank you. Vapes are literally being passed around in hallways for children to take a hit in between classes. Vapes are everywhere at parties. Many high school students are legally buying vapes down the street from here, and they share them with much younger children. I have met many of you on the city council. You're really good people, and I know that you would never want a child to be put in harm's way. That's exactly what's happening when vapes are so easy to buy in Shawnee. Why is the city making this so easy for kids? There is urgency in this matter. Do not wait. The quicker you take action, the quicker you can prevent an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old from buying a vape, taking it to school, and passing it to a 14-year-old who then shares it with an 11 or 12-year-old, because let me tell you, that's exactly how it works. So think about it. The quicker you take action, the quicker you can prevent harmful and deadly toxins from entering a child's body. You have that control with your vote. Right now, there's a little voice inside your head telling you to do the right thing. I ask you, do not ignore it. Protect our children.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else? I think, yep, ma'am, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record. Yep.
My name is Kathy Bigelow. I'm at 14107 West 69th Street. I'm a 15-year resident of Shawnee, and I have 3 kids who attend Benninghoven Elementary and Trail Ridge Middle School. They're 12 and 15 and 13, and I know that they'll start to be exposed to smoking and vaping, and I know it's happening in middle schools already, and so I'm very concerned about this. As a parent, my focus is always on improving the health and the development of my children. As a developmental psychologist, that's the focus of my work, is improving the health and development of young children. But I also know, and I also understand the brain research. I understand that the adult brain is not really fully developed at 18. The adult brain isn't fully developed until 25. So I think when we talk about how why wouldn't an 18-year-old be able to make this decision if they can go to work? They also aren't able to buy alcohol until they're 21. I think that's a good corollary. We know that early exposure to nicotine is especially dangerous for young brains. They're especially kind of primed for addiction. This period of life, addiction is more likely to happen when they're younger. And it may also result in more permanent changes in the brain when they are exposed to tobacco and nicotine in these early years. They're more likely to develop an addiction if they're starting earlier. And research is starting to show us that for kids who are susceptible to mental illness, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, that early addiction to nicotine can actually exacerbate those conditions and kick off a kind of a spiral of events that can be especially detrimental. So the only way we can really end this addiction and to nicotine and tobacco is to really prevent addiction early on. We know we can't prevent this for all individuals in our community. We know it's a public health crisis for all, but what we can do is create legislation that can impact this for those in our community who are more susceptible to addiction in that 18 to 20-year-old age range. We know that in localities that have passed Tobacco 21 ordinances, we have seen positive impacts on rates of smoking and tobacco use. We also know that that when we change that age from 18 to 21, it does have a direct impact on those kids who are under 18. 90% of those who provide cigarettes to children under 18 are themselves under 21. So it's that 18 to 21-year range that is providing those products to kids who are under 18. It's not a 25-year-old, it's a 19-year-old. So I urge you to pass the Tobacco 21 ordinance within Shawnee. I think that it's really our responsibility to the public health of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there are others. Yeah, ma'am, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Metzler, and my address is 1243 West 67th Terrace. I'm here this evening representing Advent Health Shawnee Mission, and I'd like to present to the City Council for consideration a letter from the Medical Director of our Lung Center as well as as the Administrative Director for our Cancer and Oncology Center. So I offer this to you for your consideration. Okay. Would you like for it to be shown to the...
Sure, yeah, if you'd like, that'd be great.
So in my role at Advent Health, I am the Community Benefit Manager, and through that role I have the distinct privilege of working with our community and our hospital in identifying what are the needs of our community and what are those initiatives that we feel like we want to focus our attention on. We do a community health needs assessment every 3 years, and we just completed our assessment an assessment for 2019. And through that assessment, we identified chronic disease as one of the areas that we want to focus our attention on, and we're currently working on a plan to address that issue. So that is my role and my interest in this. And so I would like to share this letter with you from Brandon Bowers, who is the Medical Director of our Lung Program, and also Connie Wood, who is the Administrative Director of our Oncology Services. On behalf of Advent Health Shawnee Mission, we write in support of an ordinance that raises the legal age for sale of all tobacco and nicotine products to age 21. Advent Health's policy work is driven by a legacy of caring for the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our patients. At the foundation is a commitment to promoting health policies that focus on lifestyle choices, disease prevention, and attention to factors that enhance or detract from personal health. In 2019, Advent Health Shawnee Mission conducted its Community Health Needs Assessment, as it does every 3 years. A committee representing our community and hospital was established to guide the hospital through the assessment and community health plan process. A key priority emerging from that assessment was chronic disease disparities in communities of color. High blood pressure, heart disease, and cancer closely associated with smoking were among those diseases reported as problematic for the population surveyed. Our CHNA report indicated 18% of those in our service area smoke cigarettes. Through our community education and outreach program, we are providing smoking cessation classes and see firsthand the difficulty to quit once addicted. At Advent Health Shawnee Mission Cancer Center, a certified member of the MD Anderson Cancer Network, we see firsthand lung cancer taking lives in our community. Research shows that nearly 95% of adult smokers started before age 21. We are encouraged by the local, state, and national momentum of Tobacco 21. Taking this step protects our children and provides an excellent opportunity to collectively impact health and reduce risk from smoking. Thank you for considering a Tobacco 21 ordinance and for your service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience? Yep, ma'am, if you'll come up and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Brown, and I'm with the Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. And on behalf of our agency, I want to thank you for again bringing up this important topic for discussion, and also for actually the first two topics on your agenda for the evening. Both of those are recommended proven strategies to reduce health disparities around tobacco and e-cigarette use, and so they're both very forward-thinking opportunities to really support a lot of the widespread community momentum we have right now. There's been a little bit of talk about schools, here this evening, and my agency, along with a lot of the partners who are here tonight, hosted a roundtable with the schools. We had great representation from public and private schools. Shawnee Mission, DeSoto schools were there. SROs were there, and this topic that we're talking about tonight was one of the things they were so appreciative of in the community. The feedback we got from that event is that even though we are nowhere near where we would like to be yet, we are starting to kind of see a turn in the trend locally, and I think a lot of that is because of the great community work we've been doing and the policymaker support we've had. We're working with the State Department of Education on a statewide task force to address youth tobacco and vape use. We also locally are engaging youth because they know best how to work and support themselves. We had some terrific representatives here tonight. We have actually 4 youth groups in Johnson County now that are working on these issues at the middle school and high school level from all different areas of the county, and we're really starting to see some really terrific projects in education with peer-to-peer, which I think will be very effective, especially when you combine it with strong policy efforts such as this. So I just wanted to introduce myself tonight and let you know I'm here if there are any questions that I can be of service to answer as you have your conversation, or if anything comes up in the next, week or two, or however this conversation goes for you. We're here as a resource. We're happy to research or give you any kind of information you need, hook you up with others that might be able to help if we don't have the answers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Lindsay.
You mentioned the data that you're starting to see, you said a turn in the trend.
Yes.
Do you have any specifics on that? I'd be really curious in the areas that have, similar to that Massachusetts study example. Do you have anything local?
I'm actually going to defer that to a colleague of mine from the Mental Health Center. She has the exact number. She has the information with her, and I think she was planning on that in her remarks. So is that all right if I
pass
that down the line? Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. If you want to come up and state your name and address for the record.
I'm just kidding. I know Steven's just dying to get it off of there and get it over here.
Hello, I'm Jamie Katz. I'm with Johnson County Mental Health Center here in Shawnee. And so my focus is on prevention. That's my field is prevention coordinator. So here's just a little information for you. So Tobacco 21, it's really about youth initiation and stopping youth before they start this addiction. And we know, and we had a speaker talk earlier about the adolescent brain and that it's really still developing until about the mid-20s, and it's uniquely sensitive to nicotine addiction. The last part to develop is actually the prefrontal cortex. It's right here. And that's like the brain's kind of rational part. That's the part that deals with like responding to situations with good judgment and awareness of long-term consequences. Like that's all part of the prefrontal cortex, long-term planning, executive functioning. But nicotine interferes directly with the maturation of the prefrontal cortex. It affects the neuroplasticity, the synaptic pruning, the myelination of axons, and nicotine in particular acutely activates but chronically desensitizes the area of the brain responsible for learning and memory. So it directly affects that prefrontal cortex. So it can turn into long-term impairments for somebody that starts smoking as a teen or uses any type of nicotine as a teen. It can turn into long-term impairments in impulse control, memory, attention, and then why we're a big part of it is it also affects later in life mental health and substance use problems. And according to the Kansas Communities That Care Student Survey, it's a survey that's taken in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades, and it's actually taken in almost all of our school districts in Johnson County, and actually really throughout the state. And if you guys would like to know the data, like where to get the data, it's available by county. It's www.kctcdata.org is like the website, and you can't dive into district data. That's only for superintendents to know. I don't even know it, but we're allowed to know county data. So I can give you Johnson County data. So on average, area youth try cigarettes for the first time at about 13.4 years of age. They try their first electronic cigarette around 14 years of age. And about 21.6% of youth have tried electronic cigarettes. And 12.77% have used vape at least once in the last 30 days. And that's a pretty good indicator of regular use. If they're using in the last 30 days, it's a pretty good indicator that they're using pretty regularly. However, that number has actually declined from 2018. So in 2018, it was 14.04. Now it's 12.77. That doesn't seem like that's a lot, but it is compared to the rest of the state and the nation. So in the state, so Johnson County compared to the rest of the state, it's continued to rise from 8.18% to 12.6. So while the states continue to rise, we're actually seeing a bit of a decrease in Johnson County, which is really promising. And that's also kind of what Scott had kind of shown, is we think a lot of that has to do with Tobacco 21, as well as all the efforts that we're doing in terms of prevention. But I will say in 2016, the number was only 3.3%. Now it's 12.77. And we know that 95% of long-term smokers start before the age of 21. So while we do have an adult smoking rate, what we know is majority, 95%, start before the age of 21. And we've worked a lot on prevention. We have a whole program called End the Trend. It's specifically for middle school students because we know that's when it starts. And endthetrend.me is the website. We've done presentations for youth, parents, schools. Our teen task force has done a fantastic job of, because they're very passionate about this. This is not something that we wanted them to do. We asked, what do you want to do? And they're like, we want to focus on vaping prevention because we see it in our schools. And we see it with our friends, and we see it with our peers, and we want to do something about it. And so Hannah has been a big leader in that, talking with our elected officials, and also doing trainings in the school. So like tomorrow we're going to a middle school and presenting, and I'm not really doing the presenting, you're doing the presenting, because we know that, middle schoolers tend to listen to high schoolers. We've also done Vaping 101 training about a year ago, trained the trainer workshop about 6 months ago, and last month we did a roundtable discussion around vaping and youth addiction. And what we're hearing from schools is that we have to be preventing it. We need to be doing more because they're seeing high school students that are truly addicted, that can't even go an hour without using, that are getting multiple offenses and multiple out-of-school suspensions because of vape, but they can't stop. So, there's an opportunity here. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, Lindsay. Yeah. Did you have a question?
I have one more data question for you.
Go for it.
So I've given the Communities That Care survey many a time in 6th grade. I'm curious, you mentioned that there's a link to learning and memory with the use of nicotine. Does that survey connect the dots so that we know that students who do use those products have less a chance of graduating, or their scores are different? Is there any sort of direct correlation in that data?
Not through KCTC data,
But
I'm sure, I'm assuming that there is probably other data, medical journals, whatnot, that probably have that data that does show that.
I didn't know if we had that locally.
No.
Okay, sure. All right, thank you.
No, not that I'm aware of.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to go up to the microphone, sure.
Need my name again?
Yes, please.
Emmett Boswell, 10909B, Shawnee Mission Parkway. I had just thought of something that was good for the council. The what the lady that had just said was, I think, a great initiative in the sense of trying to be preventative of youth by using programs and resources within the school. I think that's a great solution. I think that would be a better alternative than to limit fee legislation means, but to focus more on the programs in the schools might be a better solution instead of restricting.
Okay, thank you. Yep, ma'am, if you want to come, sure, yep, come up and state your name and address for the record. There's one right behind you too, so yeah.
Okay, Tina Webb from 61 10 Roger Drive, and I'm not a smoker, never been interested in it. I understand their arguments, but I understand human rights. But you also got to remember, these kids that have started drinking, smoking, doing drugs, there's a reason behind all that. And that's usually some kind of peer pressure or some pressure that's happening around the household. I know many of my friends, when I was growing up, they either was taking drugs or smoking or drinking, take your choice, and they could get their hands on it at any age, and not necessarily from somebody between 18 and 21. My first cigarette was handed over to me by a 60-year-old man when I was 5 years old. So, no, there is no point in that. Okay? People were trying to get away from being sexually abused by somebody in the family, a death of somebody close to them in the family, or just downright peer pressure when trying to be, back in our day, sorry, the cool kids. Okay? So, it is not the fact of what age they should decide on when to start smoking, drinking, drugs. And now, I guess it's this vaping electronic cigarettes, which is a new fad. Back in my days, we didn't have that. We had marijuana, snorting coke, and a few other drugs, popping pills. And I understand that some of the kids that are ADD and ADHD and are popping pills are selling their pills to other kids. And like I said, it don't matter what age you're at. I do commend you too for doing what you're doing, because we didn't have that when I was going to school. Northwest did have a smoking lounge. It didn't get the smokers out of the bathroom until the winter came along. Forget it. The girls would not stand outside. Okay? So changing this age group is not going to make any difference when you're under a lot of pressure growing up. All they're going to do is head over to Kansas, why not? Missouri. As a matter of fact, my husband would always drive over Missouri because it was cheaper with the tax. Okay? So it don't matter, because they will get hold of it. Either go somewhere else, or somebody's going to sell it here on the black market. And then that's the point where we got to stop it. Because with the vaping thing, and I do have a master's degree in science and natural health, and I know the chemicals that's in some of these vaping, if they're taking any kind of conventional drug, it's going to interact with those drugs. And yes, that is what's causing a lot of the breathing problems with the vaping. Okay? A little education. Now, I would suggest you to make sure the school has a certain restroom or for just the smokers. Okay? Try to at least get them out of the bathroom so she can have them. Another thing, try to get some support groups in your school. Find out, why are these kids starting to smoke? Is there any way you can get to one person, just one child? All you got to do is one person, transfer them over, and stop smoking. Educate them. Tell them there is alternative ways to get past the pressure they're going through. Because you may have a perfect life. You may not have a, father that's passing away. Or you may not have a father that's maybe whenever he ever gets home. And that could be the trigger. I know that's what happened to one of my friends. Luckily, when she got out of school, she quit. But it had to take her getting away from her father.
Ma'am, you are at your time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like? Yes, if you'll come up and state your name. Yep, if you'll come up and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
I have very bad varicose veins. No. I'm a registered nurse, BSN, and I just wanted to hit home on what the lady just said just now, and then also these advocacy groups for advent health, because I really do believe that it starts at home, but more importantly, what we're seeing now, just now in the companies, a lot of companies are wellness incentives with the offering of, if you have a wellness site on the site where you can check in and, if you're logging in or doing a health assessment, then you have an incentive. And I really think that someone mentioned earlier that it starts way before we're at that level of 11 to 18 and at home. So if we have less parents at home smoking, then, and whether they work or not, but if they're attending a company or whatnot, we're going to see a decrease in smoking. I really believe that healthcare costs will decrease the more we offer this in the workplace. And I think, like anything, vaping is a fad, kind of like a lot of things come and go. And I'm very passionate about education and communication. And the more we see companies increasing these incentives for others to stop these behaviors, whether it be smoking or obesity, which we know is on the rise greatly. And I think part of that, and they try to quit, but what I've read statistically, those who lose 40 pounds over 2 years gain it back. So they resort to another addiction, perhaps smoking, because it's easy to get. So I really do believe that we have to lean more towards prevention. I love this 21KC idea. Absolutely love it. However, I think that it starts way earlier than that. In the home, with education, offering these parents something to turn to at work other than nothing, which is going to decrease costs for companies, decrease costs for community, the legal system, across the board. So I really believe in prevention, and it starts way before 21. At that point, if these kids are coming from abusive homes or whatnot, if their parents have incentives to go to work and they have an on-site clinic they can check into, counseling, that's key. Counseling, it's all about the mind, keeping the mind right. And we're really going to see across the board, I think, more of a decrease in smoking than just targeting at age 18. Starts way before that for those children that are disadvantaged. And we're just now hearing more and more about it, but I'm personally seeing more and more employment agencies and jobs. It does tend to be the jobs that have the ability the resources to be able to reach out and offer that. But maybe for the ones that are smaller or that do not have those financial resources to have an on-site clinic with a support system, maybe we can help them in some way. Maybe some more aid like we see with some of our agencies that are given incentives from the government to employ so many people that have disabilities per se, are mandated to do that. Maybe we can take some of that money and put it towards that. Because I really believe that it's all about prevention, and that starts whether you're wealthy or you're higher up. So I really think it's both, but if we start early, give incentives to these parents that do not have access to it, the better off we're all going to be. So when they get to be 11 years old, 12, whatever it is, even if they don't have support at home, we've got something going here to help those parents. Because I think counseling, and it all starts with the mind, like the prefrontal cortex, absolutely. We can get that going, rationalization, decision making, and if we're, we all want purpose to report to work. And if we're reporting and we have a support system in place, then maybe it's going to hit home, let's hope, and there'll be a good start somewhere. So I'm just an advocate of that. Thank you.
And ma'am, I think I missed your name and address at the beginning. Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind.
My name is Sherry Page, and it's 923 Northeast Woods Chapel Road. That's number 117, East Missouri, 64064.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yep, ma'am, if you'll come up and state your name and address for the record.
Oh, no, some voice might be a little shaky. My name is Michelle Canning, mother of Alyssa Canning, and my address is 6025 Brown Ridge Drive in Shawnee. I want to tell you that, I'm a little nervous, but I was a school secretary in the DeSoto School District for 14 years at the grade school level. And I'm here to defend the schools because it is impossible for the staff at any school to have eyes in all places, bathrooms, hallways, gyms, wherever. So I think we need to give the schools some credit for what they do because it is not easy. We had someone at my elementary school who, from his 14-year-old brother, brought a vape pen to school, and he was caught, and he had out-of-school suspension. That was a big wake-up call that it's in our elementary schools. My son, my daughter, my older daughter, they all talked about what went on in middle school and in the high school. They're like, Mom, it's everywhere. I am pleading as a mother, a parent, for her friends. I'm not worried about my daughter. We do talk about prevention. Schools do Red Ribbon Week every year. And there's resources for parents, there's counseling, there's psychologists for parents and children if they need that help. There are things available to them. But I'm pleading for you to consider this because I'm a mom and I would throw myself in front of a train for my kid. And that's what, this isn't going to solve the problem 1,000%, but it's definitely going to make it harder for these things to be available to these kids. Whether it's 18-year-old or 14-year-old or a 12-year-old or however it is. It's going to make it harder for them to access. And I just beg that you consider this and consider the lives and the futures of our children and their health and the futures of our society, because these are the people who are going to be making the decisions and laws for you. So, and taking care of you when you need them. So I just beg that you consider passing this, and I applaud these kiddos and everybody. I'm very open-minded for what you all said. I completely understand. But I'm begging for my child's life and for her friends. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience who would like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, I will open it up to council discussion. Matt?
So, just a few short comments. First and foremost, Melissa and Hannah, thank you, both of you, for your presentation. You were well prepared and articulate. I'm pretty impressed with your messaging, so thank you. Lots of good comments from everybody on both sides. From where I sit, is pretty simple in my mind. Nicotine is it's an addictive chemical. We have laws in Kansas for alcohol, which is addictive, 21. They say gambling is addictive. You can't go into a casino in Kansas unless you're 21. It seems consistent with me that we do the same thing with tobacco, with smoking, with e-cigarettes. That you can't start, you can't buy it until you're 21. Completely, totally understand that kids are going to get access to anything they want. I raised 3 daughters, and I got them all past 20, believe it or not. I see what kids do, and in fact, I was a kid once too. Regarding the healthcare costs, I think that's a huge argument. Anything we can do to lasso that in, and I do believe so much in the argument that if you start exposing the brain at a younger age, it's gonna become addictive. I understand the argument about the military. I had an uncle that was in the military. He smoked. He's no longer with us. He died of cancer. And then last but not least, there was a map that we saw up here of Johnson County. And there was a big gap right in the middle of it, and it was the city of Shawnee. I'm going to tell you, if I were a parent moving to Shawnee, or moving to Johnson County, and somebody showed me that map, I think I'd move anywhere except Shawnee. So I'm in favor of tobacco 21.
Lindsay?
Also want to reiterate thanks to everyone who came to speak on this issue. It was really great to hear all of the perspectives. I am coming at this from someone who spends just about every hour of my life when I'm not here doing city council business with children, whether it's the students in Shawnee Mission schools or it's my own kids or the kids in the cul-de-sac playing. So really that's my perspective. I feel that if we can pass an ordinance that helps keep more of our children safe, helps their brains to develop in the right ways, helps them to learn better in school, I feel that it's my job as a council member representing children and adults in the city of Shawnee that I need to make the choice to pass tobacco 21. I really found it, I guess, interesting is the wrong word, compelling to learn about the impact on learning and memory, and I thought about all of the time and resource and energy that teachers spend helping our kids learn, and it's really concerning to me that there is now, there are things happening that are making it precluding kids to learn to their greatest potential. I mean, that's our job, is to help this next generation be the best they can. So to me, it feels common sense to do that. Regarding the military perspective, that was one thing I was kind of curious about. I had heard, read some reports that perhaps the military was looking at changing things. I can't imagine they would want their soldiers using things that would impact memory and learning and health and fitness. So that was one thing I was just interested in. However, my job is to make sure we're protecting kids in our future here in Shawnee. So I am very much in support.
Okay, thank you.
You know, this hits me home pretty hard, and I know a lot of people have heard this, and my wife started smoking when she was 14 years old. We buried her a year and a half ago. I've been 17 years. We were trying to get her a double lung transplant because she couldn't quit smoking. And I had some children that were smoking. They watched their mother deteriorate. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And they had quit smoking over that because they wouldn't want to have to go through what she's been going through for all these years. She wishes she never did smoke at that age, but it had already had a grip on her by that period of time. You know, if there's any little chance in that I have that I can help somebody to get away from that and not have to go through what she had to go through and what the rest of the family had to go through. You know, you can't, military or not, they don't let you drink till you're 21. I mean, as was said, you can't go gamble till you're 21. So you can have sex at 16. Big deal. They're going to do it younger than that. You know, so I think we need to keep it all in line. As I heard from Councilmember Zimmerman there, you know, we're the open hole in the middle that everybody's coming to. You know, we need to keep in line here. You know, if somebody wants to do it, there's always going to be the way out. I mean, if somebody really wants to do it, but why not make it the hardest for them to do it? Because, I mean, if they really want it, they're going to get it anyway. But I don't want to make it to where they can just go down the end of the street and get it. You know, so I'm in favor of this.
Lisa?
Thank you. I wanted to respond a little bit to the idea of libertarianism. So the principle behind libertarianism and bodily autonomy is that we should all be able to make informed decisions on what we do with our own body. However, the scales are weighted against transparency thanks to a combination of deeply funded corporate marketing strategies and lack of reliable long-term data, peer-reviewed studies on the potential health effects of these devices. And I'm speaking particularly of vaping right now. In such cases, it is totally appropriate for the government to intervene to help level that playing field. This is definitely not a problem that the school districts can influence on their own because they simply do not have the resources or authority to make a major impact. And that is not to minimize the work that you do because it's incredible and I know that there are a lot of resources being devoted to it. And we all acknowledge that Tobacco 21 will not stop this problem entirely. I do want to say that Mr. Monroe's comments are well taken. This will push some kids to get these products from alternative sources. However, that does not mean that it will not have an impact on the overall use, and there is strong evidence that Tobacco 21 does decrease overall use. I strongly support the adoption of Tobacco 21.
Eric?
Yeah, I feel compelled to make a few comments here because I've heard this, everybody commenting on the military aspects and all that, and I find that to be almost humorous. Nobody seems to know what's going on when we talk about the military in this thing. We weren't talking about the military smoking cigarettes and the right for a young soldier to smoke a cigarette. We're talking about the fact that an 18-year-old person can go and serve his country and die on the battlefield. That has nothing to do with cigarettes whatsoever. We're talking about choice, and we're talking about an age category here of people that are in that predicament. And we're singling this age group out. And I'm trying to point out that soldiers do have that responsibility. They will be out there taking care of us. And we're going to sit here and say, hey, you can't smoke or whatever. You know, most of them don't smoke. The Army got pretty smart. A lot smarter than I got in. I got in 1970. And most of you that were in a long time ago can remember the terms, smoke them if you got them. Okay? And I got really sick of picking up everybody else's cigarette butts after the break and everything. It was a real pain in the tail, quite frankly. But the bottom line is, the military has gotten away from that. I could go buy a carton of cigarettes in the PX for $1. For a carton. And I could go buy a bottle of Crown Royal for $2 over in the Class 6 store. Can't do it anymore. You're paying the taxes there too. So I think the Army got smart. They got tired of paying all these disabilities and stuff. And now we're no longer running combat boots like I had to do, or I got the bad knees and everything. We're running tennis shoes with a PT uniform on. Yeah, you don't smoke cigarettes anymore. You don't push cigarettes. You don't push drinking anymore. I'd put the military lifestyle and their health habits ahead of their civilian counterparts any day of the week. So that's not where we're going. We're going with the fact that there should be some choice in the matter. They're adults. They're considered adults by law. So we're going to sit there and say, well, I'm going to take your rights away. Because I'm Eric Jenkins and I'm on the City Council of Shawnee. So I'm going to take your rights away. What gives us the right to take their rights away? You know, I'm really impressed with these two young girls down here as well. And I'm very impressed with the gal back here, this lady right there. I'm pointing at you because I don't even remember your name. But the bottom line is, I believe in that. I believe in the education process. When I sit here and read the Advent Health document, and it says there's 18% of the people in this area that smoke, I'm delighted. You know what it was about 50 years ago? I mean, we're making big progress, guys and gals. We really are. We're coming a long way, baby. And we're still moving in that direction. And your efforts, the kind of efforts you guys are putting out, is helping us get there. But taking a group of people's rights away, I don't know if that's the right answer. I think those are the right answers. I think the stuff you guys are doing are the right answers, and I think it's having some really significant impacts, okay? And I think parents need to get on top of this stuff too. You know, they'll dump your babies off at the daycare, and you don't see them for the next 18 years until you go to their high school graduation. They're getting a little old too. We need a little parental guidance here as well, okay? And I think the counseling concept, heck yeah, let's identify these problems when people are young. But no, the latest mood is in this country, we'll just pass a law. We'll just make everybody stop. And you know what? That usually doesn't even work. That's the sad part about it. It doesn't even work because people do it anyway. So does it have some impact? Maybe so. It might have some minimal impact. But is that minimal impact, does that offset the fact we're taking people's rights away? And I'm having a hard time weighing that one out, guys. I really am. Because I don't think I have the right to take somebody else's rights away because somebody in his group may give a kid a vape. How many 18-year-olds and 21-year-olds are doing that? I bet you it's a pretty small percentage. So let's punish all of them, right? Let's get them all. Just throw the big dragnet out there, we'll get all the 18, 21-year-olds to say you can't do it anymore. I mean, come on, guys, let's be reasonable about this. I think there has to be some reasonableness test on this kind of stuff. And I really believe in the process of education. I'm always told that education is the key to everything. Let's educate. Obviously, we're making progress. It's down to 18%. We're getting there. Let's keep plugging away and plugging away hard. I smoked cigarettes at one time, 19 to age 32. I looked at back of cigarettes and said, what the hell am I doing? I tossed them away and never smoked again. So you can do it. These kids that are getting suspended, they can sure as hell quit. They haven't got through their brains that, hey, I need to stop this. But they can quit. A suspension is a pretty important thing, by gosh. Hey, I've been suspended, I better get my act together. I think that kind of action does help, and I think it will help, and I think it will have a huge impact. We got to police some of the rules and regulations we have. That would be a good start. Don't you think? Let's police some of those. We got a lot of stuff in place right now, and passing Tobacco 21, I really think it's just horrible. I don't think it's a horrible concept, but I think it's horrible to pick out one group. You can outlaw smoking, whatever, I don't care. But picking one little group out here and saying you guys can't participate, that seems patently unfair. It really does. So I'm having a little bit of problem with it still, even though I just want to, in closing, because I'm going to have to shut up here in a second, but I want to thank everybody in this room because I really appreciate your comments. I listened carefully to every single one of them. And I believe you're passionate about what you say, and I believe you're convinced about what you say, and I think it has true meaning. I'm not discarding it at all. So I guess we're looking at it kind of from two different angles. Some of you look at it from the health aspects, some of you look at it from the mom aspects. I'm trying to look at it from the basic human rights aspect of what do we have the right to do. So that's why we're having the disconnect. I'm with you on all this other stuff because I agree. Smoking's bad. It kills people. It gets cancer. Drives up our health cost. I mean, it does a lot of things, but those programs we're starting to phase in, like employers getting a break on health insurance, those kind of things, they're very effective. Let's push that. Let's go in those directions, and let's make this thing work. So with that, thank you so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Jim.
Yeah, there's been an awful lot said from all sorts of different sides, and I find myself appreciating particularly what you young lady said, and having been with someone who was in the Shawnee Mission School District for somewhere around 30 years on advisory board as Eric was, and then on the school board and things, watching things going through, and these what might be called fads, and we're going through this one right now. But it still comes down to me that, and I just make a preemptive statement that says, number one, I came from a family of smokers. I never, ever in my 76 years on this earth have used a tobacco product. I just have been so absolutely turned off it. So for that reason, I'm going to support this, but I'm not done yet. So anyway, that having been said, that going back, and Eric will remember, I remember flying on airplanes in the 50s, and every tray that came out with food had a little carton of 3 cigarettes. Ray, Eric, when you got the MREs, or what would they weren't cigarettes, the C rations had cigarettes in there, yeah, and they were in there, and I had C rations in 1967 that some of them said 1954 on them, and they weren't any better then than they were before, and I hear all these stories. But my point is there, and I'm sure everyone in this room has had a family member that's smoking, that's been a smoker, and they usually get sick. And, you know, a smoker diagnosed with lung cancer, the 5-year viability is less than 20%. So, I don't know, is this the start? I think this needs to be nipped in the bud, and is it our place to say we should do it? I think in this case, yes, because I go back to, you know, the Surgeon General in 1964, 74 said, you know, every package of cigarettes says this can be hazardous to your health, trying to educate the people. And so I think the key is education of the young people and what's going on. But then again, Matt's got 3 daughters, I've got 4 kids, and it's, and Eric's going through the same thing. You know, it is hard, but the education is a critical part. And Jamie and Lindsay, you know, good luck in whatever you can do and to do it, because this is important going forward, because it is a huge drain on our society. And God bless every one of the guys in the military that go out and do what they do. And why they do it, I don't know, but bless them. I agree with that, but I am for this.
Any other discussion from the council? Lisa?
Just a couple of notes. Councilmember Jenkins, you talked about how you believe that there would be a small decrease associated with this in the use of tobacco products. And I'm pretty sure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the data that you all shared indicated that it would probably be around a 12% decrease. Is that accurate?
Between 15 and 25%, depending on the age.
Decrease. And is that actually what we have experienced in the Johnson County or in the Kansas City metro regional area for cities that have passed?
Yeah, Scott, if you want to step up to the mic.
I'm not sure the data is there yet within the Kansas City metro that I can answer that question. There was a study done by the National Institute of Health suggesting that the expected reduction in usage among teens would be somewhere between 15 to 25%.
Okay, I would not characterize either 15 or 25% as a minimal decrease. I think that statistically speaking, that is fairly significant. That is not a small decrease. The other thing I want to note is we're kind of bantering about this idea that people can quit smoking whenever they want as long as they make the decision to smoke. And coming from a public health background, I can tell you that is not the nature of addiction. Addiction is a disease. And it is something that needs to be treated as a medical condition. It is not something that people can easily turn on and off. And it's not that nobody can do that, and I believe you when you say that you had that experience, but I can tell you that some people can't. And I've had experience with both types of people. I don't want to minimize that. I don't want to minimize the fact that once we get started down this path of using, it could be tobacco, it could be alcohol, it could be any other kind of drugs, that some people's bodies will develop an actual addiction that will require some sort of medical intervention to de-addict themselves. And even then, it will be a lifelong battle with that disease. So I don't find the argument compelling that it's a minimal impact. And I don't find the argument compelling that you can stop whenever you want to, because I don't believe that there's any data to support that. But thank you.
Jim?
The other caveat I'll throw out here, we are discussing this in the committee meeting because this is where we usually vet things. And the motion in front of us tonight is not whether we're going to pass this or not, is that are we going to recommend that it goes forward to the council at a formal council meeting to be passed. And so to clarify, I'm going to vote and I am for this to move this forward to the council for consideration at a council meeting.
Okay. Any other discussion from the council?
I was just asking whether you needed a motion.
I was just going to ask. Yeah, I would love a motion.
I moved to take this along to our council meeting for discussion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes with Councilmember Jenkins opposing. Okay, the second item is to discuss the proposed electronic cigarette retail establishment ordinance. Concern has been expressed by council members regarding the number and location of electronic cigarette vape stores in Shawnee. Staff have drafted an ordinance to regulate the location of new establishments. Community Development Director Doug Allman will make a presentation. Welcome, Doug.
Good evening. I've been asked to give an overview of electronic cigarette establishments in the city of Shawnee. As you all are aware, we've been under a moratorium for new vape facilities. I'm going to refer to these shops as vape facilities rather than electronic cigarettes because it's easier to say, and I think people are more familiar with that term. The city was experiencing a proliferation of vape stores within Shawnee in early 2018, and at that time, the council decided to enact a moratorium for many more vape stores opening in Shawnee. Since that time, an extension was made on that moratorium, and it is now set to expire in June of 2020. And the idea was that it would give staff time to research potential methods of keeping the proliferation of vape stores from happening within the city limits, and also keep the clustering of those stores to a minimum. And so this time has really allowed us to research the issue. Since that time, as was discussed with the Tobacco 21 issue, lung vaping illnesses among teens has become a national attention, a national focus since that time. Federal regulations are more than likely going to be enacted because of those concerns. And then locally, on June 28, 2019, the Kansas Supreme Court upheld the validity of Topeka's T21 ordinance, which prohibits the sale of cigarettes, e-cigs, tobacco products, and liquid nicotine to anyone under the age of 21. And so having an endless moratorium is not legal. We will have to provide action and guidance in some way. I think that staff has come up with a good model that we can follow. Again, not to outright ban vape facilities within the city, but to effectively regulate them so that, again, there's not a proliferation or clustering of those type of uses in any particular area of the city. In general, a vape shop is defined as a retail store specializing in the sale of electronic cigarette products. Such stores also may sell products such as magazines, shirts, and other clothing items that are marketed to a younger age. E-cigarettes are handheld electronic devices that attempt to create the feeling of tobacco smoking. It essentially works by heating a liquid to generate an aerosol, commonly called a vapor, hence the word vape, that users inhale. E-liquids are liquid nicotine, although there are some products that do not specifically include nicotine that is diluted by adding flavorings. Other products generally mixed in the e-liquids include propylene glycol, glycerin, and water. City staff proposes to further define a vape shop as any establishment that derives 65% or more of their sales from e-cigarette products, or those stores that hold themselves out as vape establishments, that those establishments would be covered by the ordinance that's in the packet tonight. This means that businesses such as convenience stores, such as Quick Trips that sell e-cig merchandise would not qualify as a vape shop. Currently, as I said, there's a clustering of vape stores. There's actually 5 located in the city of Shawnee. For the most part, they're located along Shawnee Mission Parkway, around Neiman, westward to Mallow Road. As I said, a moratorium's been in effect. We have had inquiries about other vape-type stores wanting to locate, but once they become aware of the moratorium, they have not pursued any further action. What city staff is proposing is an ordinance that's similar for those of you that were on the council when we decided to regulate cash advance services. What we essentially did was provide a buffer between those uses. In this instance, we're recommending a separation of 1 mile between vape facilities. I've got a graphic in here that will demonstrate what that looks like. Also, to kind of mimic what our liquor store alcohol provision requirements are, also proposing some further buffer distances of 200 feet from things like schools, churches, and residentially zoned areas. And to coincide with tobacco sales, vape shops would only be permitted to be located in the commercial neighborhood, commercial highway, and town square zoning districts. That's currently where tobacco sales are permitted today by our zoning code. This map is a demonstration of the existing vape locations. And I want to talk about this map in that the areas in blue in Western Shawnee are those areas that are 200 foot from existing zoning that would allow the potential vape use. The buffer rings actually surround our existing facilities. The yellow is a 1 mile ring, and that also coincides with those undershaded blue tones that represent those residentially zoned properties. The ordinance as it's proposed in the packet would not take effect for those existing facilities. Facilities that are open prior to enactment of the ordinance would be allowed to operate as they have. There would not be any attempt to close them down. The caveat to that is that there's not a grandfathering clause in the ordinance. If a vape store was to go out of business, it would immediately cease its right to exist, and any new user would then have to meet that buffer requirement of the 1 mile and the 200 feet from other the uses that are explained.
Nikki.
The ordinance specifically talks about change of ownership. If it's simply the change of ownership, and Lisa is here as well, change of ownership would not require them to go out of business as long as it remained continuously open. For instance, the sign changed to the name of a new business. As long as they continued to maintain a business license, they would still be grandfathered in. It's when the business goes out and does not operate anymore that the grandfather would immediately kick in, or essentially would be gone, and they would have to close and meet the separation requirements that we're proposing. So I'll go on through this presentation, but if you have questions about that map, what this demonstrates is obviously we have a clustering of 4 stores in the eastern portion of the city. We have 1 in front of Walmart. If those stores were to go out based on those search rings of 1 mile, you're more than likely going to be able to have 1 along Shawnee Mission Parkway in the Neiman area, 1 in that center search ring, and then based on our best measurements, probably another potential vape store somewhere in Western Shawnee. So again, it's not an attempt to outright ban them. I don't think that that's actually legal to do, but it would certainly cut the number of stores that could ultimately be open within our city limits. Again, we're talking about proposing an ordinance that stores which sell e-cig products but maintain sales of less than 65% would not be subject to the ordinance or the buffer distances. The clarification to that is, though, that the stores that hold themselves out as vape shops, they may have 50% sales of e-cig products, but they may also have 50% sales of shirts and those kind of things. But if they say vape store, they would be subject to the ordinance. The proposed ordinance, as we talked about, talks about the cessation or abandonment of use. I've kind of explained that. And the interesting thing about this is it's kind of like an alcohol sales type situation or drinking establishment. The ordinance has provision that we would have the ability to review sales and purchase records to say, verify if someone was actually at or above that 65% threshold. And if that were proven, then they obviously could be forced to close. That really completes our discussion. It's a short ordinance. The full details of the ordinance were in the packet. Lisa, the author of the ordinance, with a little bit of help from me, is here to answer questions. We felt that this method, there's been talk about proportion of population in the city, density calculation, standalone facilities. This is actually tested. It works with the cash advance. It's fair. It doesn't outright ban vape facilities. It's not arbitrary. And the most important thing, it's enforceable. Obviously, we have the licensing mechanism for business licenses. Any facility would have to maintain that license, and it's very simple to put a pin on a map, figure out if there's any vape stores within that 1 mile buffer or in that 200-foot extra buffer that we're requiring. And it's an easier method of regulating, in our opinion. So
with that, we would leave it to discussion, questions, and clarifications.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions yet, Eric?
No questions for Doug. Just thanks, Doug. Appreciate that. I don't see any big issues with this as far as regulating the number of vaping stores here in Shawnee. I don't see any big problems with that. I'm glad we're able to protect everybody that's already here. That's a good thing. And of course, if they go out of business, that's fine too. They lose their grandfather. That makes a lot of sense as well. I think the fact that it allows for vape sales, at least like the cartridges or whatever, you still go to Quick Trip or whatever. So there's certainly availability to the customer base out there, I would think. So yeah, that looks like a good ordinance. Good job putting it together. Thank you.
Jim and then Matt.
Yeah, I would say to Doug and your group, this is a new situation. You've addressed it based on tried and true practices that the city's used over years, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't work going forward with this, so I can support it as well. Again, moving it forward to the full council, this is just what we're going.
Thank you. Matt?
I'll make it short and simple. I concur with both Jim and Eric. Do I understand it right, Doug, that this kind of mimics what we're doing for liquor store and cash advance?
What we did was pull the 5,280-foot separation distance that we enforce for cash advance. But because this does have secondary effect, possibly on residential, obviously you don't want those type of sales around schools, colleges. We further defined that 200-foot buffer area that we do for liquor stores. It's actually based on state statute. We thought that was fair. And if you look at that spatial study analysis that we did, it's basically going to proportion so that there's 3 possibly in the city, equal proportional share. And in our mind, it was the easiest solution and certainly much more enforceable than some of the other methods that we were kicking around to start.
Sure. I like the consistency of that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, there are no other questions. Staff is seeking direction on this item. It is a policy discussion for the governing body. If the council committee wishes to proceed, the recommendation would be to direct staff to prepare an ordinance to bring back to the governing body for consideration. Yeah, I've kind of I've done this before. Before we do that, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I would accept a motion.
Move to approve. Second. Or move to move it forward to the council. There you go. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The third item is to discuss the proposed comprehensive user fee schedule. Staff is proposing a comprehensive user fee schedule to make it easier for the public to find fees for services and streamline an annual review process for all city fees. Kirby Wiley, Management Analyst, will provide an overview of the proposed fee schedule, and representatives from various departments will provide information about their user fees and any proposed changes. Welcome, Kirby.
Thank you. So I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview for this project, and then we will have some department representatives come up and discuss their either proposed or any new fees that they will be looking to do with this new project. Right now, there are fees that are being used to cover the costs of programs and services that the city offers, and they are currently located within the municipal code and within several different policy statements. This makes it very difficult for the public to be able to go in and find their fees, and it also kind of would help streamline how these fees are determined if they're all consolidated into one document. We have the policy statement 66 is the comprehensive financial policy statement that states that the city will regularly review fees, and so having it in one place will streamline that process as well. When we also look at our fees and stuff like that, we compare with our core cities, which are Olathe, Overland Park, Leawood, and Lenexa, as well as best practices for those. The following departments are recommending changes within their fees. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Sam, who I think is going to talk about fees.
Hi, good evening. Sam Larson, Deputy Police Chief.
The police department is recommending one change, and that's to the residential false alarms. There's no change to the commercial false alarms, and we support this move. The biggest reason is we did a comparison of our core cities, and this falls in line with them. We are working with the fire department and a third-party vendor to change how we collect these fees. We currently have city staff from the police department, finance, and city clerk. That police department alone is about 12 to 16 hours a month, plus a city clerk and finance's time to send invoices, receive payment, or send out second, third, or fourth notices if they haven't paid, which happens quite a bit. I'm here for any questions. It's the one change, $50 for the.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, because it's the same question I'd have with the fire department as well. Maybe one time here. We want people to have alarms, of course, and I understand it costs us money to go out there and answer false alarms. It's just the issue here, so I don't think I want to make it so people are afraid to turn their alarms on because they've had a little bit of trouble in the past with certain things going off. Is there any kind of way we have a field sort of process in there like it's caused by?
Absolutely.
Normal control?
Yeah, absolutely. There is one already. We have, with this new system, because we're going to be pushing the information to the third-party vendor, the officers on scene make a determination if we call it chargeable or not chargeable. And if an officer on scene says it's chargeable, the homeowner can call us and say, here's the issue. The alarm company came out. They have different reasons. They talk to our records supervisor, and she can make that change to make it non-chargeable where they will not be charged.
Okay, right there is
Yes, there is, absolutely.
So, and maybe it's been mentioned and I missed it. If so, I apologize. But is there a statute of limitations on this between your first alarm and your second alarm? And if you get a second alarm 5 years later?
No, I believe it's a calendar year. We bill them annually, not annually. Every time they have an alarm, second, third, fourth alarm, we send an invoice for that, but it is from a calendar year. I will tell you that for residential alarms, in 2018, we've only had 2 of them that would have had 4 alarms, and nobody more than that for residential alarms only, not for commercial, for residential only.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Corey Sands, Fire Marshal. Kind of piggybacking off of the Deputy Police Chief here, the Fire Department's looking at adding false alarm fees. And to kind of expand on your question on there's any type of overview, the Police Chief and the Fire Chief, there is an appeals process. If for the Fire Department, if a building owner disagrees, the police or the fire chief can be the appeals process and take everything into account. We do also review all the false fire alarms. I read every single report on them. Quiet Wolf will also send me that report, and I can determine too if, yeah, we accidentally did that or a kid pulled a pull station, we don't want to charge for that. We do have that right to waive a fee if it's appropriate. We're proposing following the same fire alarm fee or the fees as a police department. This is also in line with our core cities and the city of Lenexa. Fire department and police department also partnered using Quiet Wolf, so it's been used quite well.
Lindsay.
This might be a dumb question, but does false alarm also mean someone calls because they think there's a burglar? Or they call like a phone call false alarm as well as an actual alarm going off? Are we just talking about somebody pulls a fire alarm?
That's a good question. So for a false alarm, that would be if it just malfunctioned. Okay. It just activated for no reason. There's no activation of the smoke detector. No one thought there was a fire and pulled the pull station. It just activated. Okay. And what we're seeing, especially in our apartments, people aren't getting out anymore. They hear these fire alarms. They think it's just another false alarm, and they actually have a fire. And our fire crews are arriving with these buildings still fully occupied. So we're trying to correct that a little bit.
So we are, just so I'm clear, we're not talking about someone calls you because they think there's someone in their house.
Correct.
Not that kind of false alarm.
No, if they think there's a fire, we want them to activate it. They're not going to get charged. Just be if they fail to maintain their alarm system. It's just
okay. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Doug Whitaker, Public Works Director. Basically, what we're doing here is in one of the policy statements, we have a price listed for every sign, and we just want to go to cost, the actual cost of it, and therefore we wouldn't have to maintain this within a policy statement year after year after year. Primarily who we're billing is vehicle accidents. They've taken out a streetlight pole, they've taken out a sign, so it's basically we're just billing, it's the insurance company that we're billing to get reimbursement for the signs that we have to replace or streetlights. So that's primarily where we're going.
Eric?
Just a clarification, Doug, does that include any kind of additional fee for, we got to go out and put it in and everything too, so.
Yeah, we didn't look at the labor fees we have right now in the ordinance we're satisfied with. Okay. It was just, we have all these signs. That would be part of this. And yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, easy enough. Thank you.
Stephen Powell, Deputy City Manager, and I'll have the next two slides. The only fees that the Finance Department is responsible for are some of our economic development fees. And so currently when we issue an IRB, the Finance Department bills the IRB holder annually based on a percentage of the outstanding bond. And over a long-term bond, that can be a little challenging to keep track of who to send invoices to, and just the administrative work of sending those every year can be a little taxing. So instead of doing that, we're proposing doing a admin fee due at closing. That would be $15,000 plus 3% of the bond amount. And that would be capped at $250,000. So we're basically taking what we would be spreading out over the life of that bond and just charging it up front to cover the city's cost to process that. And then the second fee that's being proposed is for CID and TDD funding agreements, raising that minimum fee from $20,000 to $40,000, because that more accurately covers the city's cost to get a project from application to actually being before you all to be considered. So that just covers our costs. And then the City Clerk's Office is proposing a few adjustments to fees that are charged for public records. Some of the charges are that are being proposed are for electronic copies. Currently, we're charging 0.125 cents per page, which if you just have one page, I can't charge 0.125 cents. So we looked at the other cities, and they all just charge the same rate for paper versus electronic, which is 25 cents per page. We also have a city archive facility that we probably go over to daily at this point to retrieve records for records requests. And so we took an average of the time it takes to go to archives and come back, the mileage that would go into that trip, as well as the mileage to take the record back to archives and then come back. And that equates to the $35 for 2 round trips to retrieve a record and then take a record back. We changed the retrieval from microfilm to just cost because it's kind of hard to put a flat fee on that, because you sometimes have to search through old microfilm and it might take longer, so that would just be the staff time involved and then any per page copies that were requested. And then I worked with police and fire and the prosecutor's office to standardize the fees that we charge for police reports and fire reports. And so we are recommending revising those to, if it's 25 pages or less, the report cost is $5. If it's more than 25 pages, it's $10. And so, you know, the report sizes vary depending on whatever the crime or the fire case may be. So that was in line with what several of our other cities were charging, and it just streamlines that process for folks who are requesting those types of reports. We also changed the fee for watch guard videos to just be cost because, again, those can be time consuming to download and then either upload to a FTP site or transfer over to a external storage device. CAD reports we're recommending changing to just $2. Those are our dispatch reports. And then any type of external storage device that we would provide to someone else for a really large file would be $35. Many times we put it into like a Microsoft OneDrive account and just email a link where they can download it themselves. But there are, I think, probably happens more in police where they need a CD for a video file or something like that. So, and then where you can see where we're kind of deleting some of the other costs. Any postage would just be built into the cost. We don't, I think in probably the 18 years I've worked here doing open records requests, I've never actually mailed a record to anyone. It's usually done through email or they just come pick it up. So those are our fees for the records.
Lisa. So for open records requests, I do think it's really important that we not put our costs so high that they become prohibitive to reasonable requests for open records. And I'm not entirely sure where that line is drawn. It's somewhere between cost and cost prohibitive costs and something much higher. It feels like some of these are very large increases, and I'm really questioning, for instance, the $35 fee for putting something on a CD. Can you, and I'm not trying to micromanage, but I think from a policy perspective, it's very important that we not try to set these so high that people can't make open records requests because they can't afford them.
Yeah.
So,
I can answer that in that if we were going to be transferring something onto a CD, most likely that $35 would include staff time to transfer that. And so in many cases, if it takes 10 or 15 minutes to, transfer something onto a CD, we wouldn't charge the hourly rate of that person. It would just be that flat fee. And so when we looked across at other cities, they also, for the most part, were charging flat fees for those types of services. And I think to your point, we also don't want to ever make our fees for records so high that it discourages people from making those requests. But I also think we just need to make sure that we're certainly covering the city's cost to produce those records. We've so far in 2019, the clerk and court have processed 151 records requests and spent, upwards of 125 hours of our time doing that work. And so I think bringing some of these fees more closely in line with what we're seeing actually take us, and then knowing that year over year we're going to be reviewing them. And so if, like for some reason it starts taking way less time to transfer files onto an external storage device, then that fee would certainly be drawn down to what it is. That $35 also includes the flash drive or the whatever. I mean, those aren't expensive costs, but it includes the actual device as well. And the one thing we don't allow people to do is bring us a flash drive and say, hey, can you put something on this, because of security reasons we would rather buy those ourselves. And I can tell you, rarely have I, when I was city clerk, provided anything on a CD, especially now that we have switched over to Microsoft Outlook, and we all have OneDrive accounts where that stuff can be uploaded to the cloud and just transferred digitally. We don't get a lot of requests in the clerk's office. I think probably in the police department, they probably get a lot more requests for CDs and video media files than any of the other departments. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Tyler Worth, the Chief Building Official, and I'm going to talk about the first several bullets that are on this slide here, and then I believe Doug Allman's going to talk about the last one. So for community development, we have quite a few fees that we charge for various things, and so just running down the bullet points here, we're looking at the building permit plan review fees. The way we calculate the plan review fee won't actually change, but the plan review will change because we're changing the building permit fee, and the plan review fee is 65% of the building permit fee. We're not changing that 65%, but in turn they will end up changing just because the building permit fees that we're proposing. And then demolition permit fees, we charge a separate fee that's not based on project valuation for demolition, because there really is no project valuation. You're kind of decreasing if you're taking something down, and so we just have a flat fee for the demolition. And then some inspection fees, and then some temporary certificate of occupancy fees, and then some land disturbance fees, plan review fees for land disturbance permit. We're wanting to adjust those a little bit. So I'll be talking about all those points. So I'll go ahead and start talking about those ones now. So our building permit fees have not been updated since 1993. So it's been a while since we've gone back and looked at these. So we want these updates to be in line with the core cities, as kind of all the other departments have done. So we took that into consideration as well. And then also I looked at the International Building Code methodology for figuring out building permit fees. It gives you recommendations that I'll go over here in a minute. And then these building permit fees do include inspection fees as well. I know I mentioned we'll talk about inspection fees later, and I'll discuss that as we get to that slide and that fee. But over here on the right side, you can see the fees that we had before their strike through, and then the proposed fees. This is roughly maybe about a 30% increase in these fees. With it being so long since we have reviewed these fees, we are way behind. We're way behind other cities. We're way behind on what it costs the Building Code Division to operate. So coming up with these numbers, I didn't just kind of pull numbers out of thin air. I started with looking at what just the Building Code Division's budget is, and then also incorporating a portion of the budget for the fire marshal and the fire prevention officers to kind of come up with what it costs us to do inspections and issue building permits, plan review fees. And then I looked at the how much money we bring in a year based on building permits. And our budget is twice as much as we bring in. So by that methodology, we should almost double our fees, because, I mean, the way that the ICC building code looks at it, kind of the way that I look at it, the taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for this person to build a brand new house. I mean, it's, so that's kind of the way that it's looked at. But obviously I don't want to double our building permit fees. That's kind of a crazy thing to do all at once. Now, maybe over time, if we look at these yearly, we can, slowly maybe get closer to where we need. And then I did compare it with all the other cities, or the core cities, and then even a few other ones. I went and looked at their building permit fees, and they have charts similar to this, not exactly. And so this would bring us a lot closer to where other cities are for building permit fees. I have people come or contractors come into the counter, and they're like, "You guys are by far the cheapest. I can't believe how cheap you are. You need to raise building permit fees." Like, I even get that from contractors, which is kind of crazy. But so that's kind of where we're at for these proposed fees, and it's all calculated based on the project valuation. So this next slide here just kind of gives you an example of how it's going to raise the building permit fees, and this is for single-family homes. The average single-family home valuation that we have currently that are being constructed in Shawnee is $331,000. The current permit fee is $1,010 for that valuation. The proposed fees would be $1,606 for that building permit fee. So it is a decent jump, but to me, it's not that drastic in the grand scheme of things when you consider the valuation of some of these houses. So it's pretty much exact with Overland Park. It's a little bit cheaper than Leawood, and it's right at with Lenexa as well. This is pretty much where they're all at, and they've been there for years. And all those other cities do evaluate their fees yearly as well to see if they need to be raised. And so down here, kind of in this chart, you can see I picked different project valuations to show the current fees that we have, and then that are in yellow that include the permit fee and the plan review fee, and then the proposed fees for projects with that valuation. So you can kind of see how much it would raise. Now, there really is not a good way for me to determine, how much more this is going to generate in revenue for us, because I'd have to go back through every single building permit we issued the year before and pick the new schedule and calculate it. That would take weeks probably to do, because you'd have to manually do it. So, but with us being able to review this yearly, we can kind of look and see where our revenues are with our budgets next year to see if anything does need to be, even if that is, it needs to come back down, because now, we're not doubling our fees, so I don't see us getting to where we're bringing in more money than what it's costing us to operate. But if for some reason that did happen, we could adjust those lower, because I don't think we need to make money off this, but I think we should be compensated for our time as well. And then, so our current demolition permit, the flat fee that we currently have is $30, which that doesn't come close to accommodating our time for the plan review process, issuing the permit. We do 2 inspections on those. Honestly, $60 doesn't account for our time, but doubling this fee, with how minimal it is already, I think that's not that drastic of a jump. Now, here's the inspection fees that I told you I'd talk about. And so your inspections are included in your building permit fees, but we run into the instance where contractors have the problem with calling us out before they are ready for inspections. So we'll go out there, we'll do an inspection, we write up a list of deficiencies that need to be corrected. They call us back for inspection, we go back out there, they haven't fixed anything on our list. They're kind of wasting our time, wasting our gas money, our time, everything else, and this happens quite a bit. And so we had a fee in here for when this happens of $15, but once again, that doesn't come close to covering our time and cost. And so I'm proposing $100, which is a huge jump, but that is where all the other cities around us are for this type of inspection fee.
I think the encouragement fee is good.
It is a huge problem. Yep, exactly. So our temporary certificate of occupancy fees, these fees were actually implemented before 1993. So these ones are a little bit more recent, but they are still fairly cheap. They don't really cover our costs that goes into us issuing temporary certificates of occupancy, which also includes, additional inspections when we do this. And this raising the fees also encourages the contractors to get their final certificate of occupancy sooner, because it's going to cost them a little bit more money. This concept that we do have, temporary certificate of occupancy, is kind of a luxury. Not all cities even have a temporary certificate of occupancy. It's either you are 100% ready for occupancy or you're not. Overland Park is that way. I think Gardner. So, and by raising these fees to this puts us in line with where Lenexa, Olathe, all the other cities are with their temporary certificate of occupancy fees as well. Land disturbance fees, for the most part, our land disturbance fees were not out of line with other cities. They were fairly close. all with the exception of a low impact land disturbance permit, which is a land disturbance of less than 1 acre. We currently charge $75 for that permit, and that's the only fee. And so we'll typically do several inspections on these. There's final inspection, there's paperwork, there's plan review. You know, $75 doesn't quite cover our cost again on that. And this is doubling it once again, but that is just getting to where other cities are for this fee as well. And the 150 is right about where everybody's at. And then everything else here in red that it's kind of strike through. This is a plan review fee. This is the permit fees that we currently charge for a standard land disturbance permit, which is anything over 1 acre in disturbed area. And we had all this big complicated way of figuring these fees, and it usually averages out to be about $100. And so I just proposed that we just charge a flat rate of $100 to make it easier on contractors, permit application people applying for the permit to calculate their fees. It's just it's easier on us when it averages out to be about $100. And that's all I have for kind of the building side. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, Eric.
Not really a question, just a comment. I just want to thank you on behalf of Ken and Mary Jane Bruning, who are still trying to get into their house that's next door to me. But Corey, we were there a year and a half ago, and they're still not back in it yet. It's still a mess because of the contractor they had working on it. So thanks for giving them a hand with that as much as you can, at least, and see if we can get them back in there, and I can get my neighbors back and get the house looking halfway decent again.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Doug Allman, Community Development. I'll finish up the presentation. In terms of our land use fees, zoning fees, this is really not a significant change in our fee structure. What this is an attempt to simplify our fee structure. I've heard from developers that our fee structure and our fee policy is confusing and complicated. As you can see, there's standard rezoning, there's PUD rezoning, there's residential rezoning, there's non-residential PUD rezonings, and then a litany of different acreages that relate to different prices. What we're wanting to do is simply call rezonings what they are, whether they're a PUD. They all require the same notice requirements. They all require the same publication requirements. So the costs for whether it's a PUD residential, a PUD mixed use, or a standard traditional zoning district, it's essentially all the same in terms of cost. The two significant possible jumps that you see are in terms of the fee structures, that proposal of 40 to 80 acres or 80 acres or more, going up to $1,750. I've been here 20 years, and I can't think of one instance, even with the recent activity at 43rd Street, that we have zoned more than 80 acres with one application. So those would probably not be used very often. But obviously, if you're taking down large acreages, we would want to capture some revenue from those. And so that's the rationale for why those seem a little bit higher in terms of the fee structure. Site plans, the same is true. We had a different mix, whether it's industrial, commercial, office, residential. We did a basis of floor area, buildings less than, greater than 10,000 square feet. Basically, if it's a 2,500 square foot drive-through restaurant or a 50,000 square foot office building, the same diligence and review is used. The same amount of staff time. We still have to review stormwater drainage. We review public improvements and those sort of things. So again, we're trying to simplify this by just calling it a preliminary site plan, a final site plan, a revised site plan, or an admin site plan. Again, trying to simplify this, make it more readily understandable by the development community. Some of the other things that we've looked at, the Board of Zoning Appeals fee, I think, has been the same since I started here and probably before. We try to keep that low because that's usually an individual homeowner. But by raising it to $25, again, we have to do public notification in the paper, and we have to send out letters. At that 150 level will at least cover our costs for that. It obviously wouldn't cover staff time for being at the meeting, writing the report, and that sort of thing. But at least we're going to be able to recoup mailing and the notice in the newspaper. The last is special use permits in the land use category. We are talking about raising that again because publication and notification is required. Generally, a commercial daycare center, something like that, a cell tower that requires a special use permit is not going to balk at $375. The special use permit for in-home daycare, we're keeping at $100 because usually that's an individual home occupation type person, and so we're not wanting to burden them with a large cost. And the $100 does cover a portion of the notification requirements and all things that are required for a special use that is similar to a zoning activity. Public improvement fee, that's our engineering side of things. That fee we're looking at raising a simple 1%. We are doing more inspections in the field now with some changes that we've done in community development. We have an on-site engineer that does in-house review of those plans. She is a PE. Her time is valuable. And so that 1% is intended to cover her workload and schedule. And then also with our inspector, he's actually doing more land disturbance, large mass grading inspection, and those sort of things. So he's working more and is in the field more and is actually accommodating some developers by doing some Saturday work for instance, if asphalt plants are closing, we're accommodating them by getting the asphalt in when the plants are open, even if it's on a Saturday. So that 1% is intended to cover some of that overtime that may come up as well. I think that's the last slide for me.
Thank you.
Listed on this slide are all of the policy statements and sections of the municipal code that currently have fees listed in them. So essentially what all these would be we would take out the fees and say refer to policy statement XYZ to where to reference it. That way the rules are still there for, especially I know with Parks and Recreation with like a lot of their rental facility rules and stuff like that, those would still apply. We're just moving those fees out of there. So that brings me to the recommendation that we are looking for. To move forward, we would need an ordinance to pass the fire alarm fees, similar to what police has. An approval to propose a fee schedule and revisions to the referenced policy statements and sections of the municipal code. And if this is recommended, it will go on to the December 23rd council agenda.
Okay, thank you, Kirby. Is there any questions for her before we move into public comment? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, staff is recommending forwarding the proposed comprehensive fee schedule and revisions to corresponding policy statements in various sections of the Shawnee Municipal Code and an ordinance authorizing false alarm fire fees to the governing body for consideration. We'll accept a motion.
I'd move that we move forward with the staff's recommendations for the new false fire alarm fees and the proposed fee schedule revisions.
Okay, second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, the fourth and final item is to discuss the 2020 state legislative program. Assistant City Manager Caitlin Gard will present information about issues and priorities for the 2020 state legislative program. Welcome, Caitlin.
We're on the home stretch. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about the 2020 state legislative program. A draft of that program was included in your packet memo this evening. Additionally, it was emailed out to this group a few weeks ago asking for comments, and we'll talk about those here in just a little bit. But as far as our House districts, we have 4 that primarily represent Shawnee. Haven't changed. Obviously, there was none in this just this past election. So we do have relationships with these representatives. Additionally, we do have one primary senator that represents Shawnee, have a relationship with her as well. The same program, or the same development structure occurred this year as it does in all of our previous years. We start with last year's legislative program. We evaluate that. We look at any legislation that passed over the last year and then any legislative current climate. And then we look at what other cities in Kansas are doing. Again, our peer cities that we've talked about almost all evening. What the county's doing in their legislative platform. We are very involved with the League of Kansas Municipalities, and we also attend and are very actively involved in the Shawnee Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. And then after we look at we evaluate everything and we look at what everyone else is doing, we request input from our management teams, for our department heads, and then also input from council before we bring this draft forward at the committee meeting tonight. And so that's how we came up with our 2020 state legislative program. We have similar program sections to our 2019 program. So all the sections are the same. What we did add this year, per the request of Councilmember Jenkins last year, is a legislative priorities section. So all of the items that are in the legislative priority section can be found in other sections of the program. These are just items that we want to more focus on, something that we think items that may be brought forward to the legislature and we're prepared to testify or have our we do contract with a lobbyist that we can have go testify on our behalf. So these are items that we just think are going to be more prominent, items that we're ready to discuss and talk about, whereas all the other sections are kind of just subjects and topics that we feel are pertinent to the city. However, we don't know if they're going to necessarily come up in the upcoming session. We really don't have too many changes from the 2019 program. We do have a number of language updates that includes the property valuation to be more aligned with the dark store theory concept. We did update our property valuation language to be more consistent with the league's language in their legislative platform. Additionally, we updated our statewide energy policy language, again, to be more consistent with the league's language. And then lastly, we did kind of generalize our mental health statement it was previously more focused on beds in hospitals, and we wanted to make that a little bit more broad. Just we want to focus on mental health kind of in a more general aspect, especially because our police department does such a great job with that mental health co-responder program. We just want to say that we support mental health programs in general rather than specificity of the language as it was before. We do have 4 additions this year. Again, that legislative priority section. So even though the items that are in that section are not new additions, we do think that those items are going to come up this year, and we're ready to testify on those on the behalf of the governing body. During our non-discrimination ordinance additions earlier this year, it seemed to be the consensus of the governing body that that a non-discrimination statement be handled at the state level. Therefore, we did include something in our program. That obviously could be up for discussion tonight, but it sounded from this group that it needed to be handled at a state level. So we are saying in our statement, hey, state, you should handle this. We did add avenues for required publications. We currently use the legal record for our required legal notices and public publications, specifically for our bids and ordinances, etc. We, along with the City of Lenexa, are hoping that we can get that changed from in print to online. We think that that can reach a broader audience. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a physical legal record in print, so I just want to make sure that we're reaching the largest number of people, so hopefully that can occur online. And then additionally, we did add a statement regarding medical marijuana. It is the same language that's included in the league's policy and agenda, so we did, the police department supports that language, and so we added it to ours as well, just in case it does come up. We're not sure if it will, but we're ready if it does. Are there any questions or discussions before I move on from this slide?
Eric?
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, I want to delegation that we're one voice on that, and we're really not. The other thing is, and I talked about this last year, we got stuff here with some priorities, but I'm wanting to look at the possibilities of, are there some things that we would really like that are tangible kind of things? These are a lot of feel-good stuff and everything. Are there some tangible things like Mary Pelcher Cook and Cox and all you guys get out there and seek us some funding so that 43rd Street out there to our new Homeland project can get funded, or we can have some help from you guys to get that done. I mean, to actually focus on some actual specific things we'd like to do. I've always wanted to see something like that in here. We don't have anything like this. It's supposed to be this kind of generalized statements and stuff that we love everybody and we want this and we want to support you on that and we want to support on this. So is there a possibility we could do something like that? If we can identify some needs that we have, some tangible needs, and maybe include them in our legislative program?
Yeah, and I can let Nolan speak to this as well, but what I would say is we can absolutely look into something like that. The reason that these statements are so, I guess you would say general or broad, is because we don't want to tie our hands. So as a statement of the governing body, if the governing body approves this legislative platform, it gives staff and our lobbyists a general direction on how to testify on behalf of these items down in Topeka. And so the more specific they get, the less, I don't know, the less staff or our lobbyist has the ability to speak on your behalf. Does that make sense?
Specific things we want, though, I don't think we should be shy about asking for them, and then they can lobby for those specifically, if we can get something.
And I would say on those specific projects, even like the right, yeah, right, yeah. And I think on those, like when we get into kind of those specific projects or topics, a lot of times we do contact our state legislators directly. Sometimes if it's a grant application, looking for kind of letters of support or information, that we do contact them directly. Usually in terms of kind of a funding source on projects, usually you're working through that agency or department, kind of going through their grant application process. So there's not really kind of the ability to put kind of more of a, and I don't want to focus on the project per se. I see your point, but sometimes it's kind of a challenge to kind of go that specific with a legislative agenda. So.
Something really want to focus on it, get a little laser focus on that, and say, yeah, we really want this, guys. Can you help us out here?
Yeah, I was very in answer to your question. I think oftentimes, if we have a desire or something that we want, we're probably not the only one of the other 500 and some cities. So if they have the flexibility, it's all about compromising things. But if we can get together, say with someone from Topeka or some way from Liberal that has the same thing, i.e. Bogdan, same thing like there, it gives our legislators a chance to go to talk to, the people from those districts. So then they can come up with a consensus and a quorum rather than, there's 165 people up there, and we only got 5. But if they're in a quorum or a group of maybe 30 or 35, that carries oftentimes a lot more weight. Now, are we specifically going to get it? No. I think like with Homeland, specifically, they went for the grant, but we ended up getting $4.5 or $5 million from the Department of Commerce or something. But I know all of the legislators are involved in that. So I think I understand what you're saying, but I think that given the flexibility
In a programmatic context, yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's not an issue. I'm talking about in terms of if we have a very specific pet project that we would like to move forward, and there's not any other cities or counties in the state to really give the rat's tail about that, but we would like to get our delegation on it and see what they can do. Yeah. And, maybe, and just say, hey, guys, we want to see you do this. And we could do that, I guess, verbally, just off the cuff. Say, hey, guys, we'd like to see you work on this. But it'd be kind of nice to state it in our objectives, I would think. It might give it a little more weight.
legislature has been.
That's what did 7 Highway. We went there lobbying, and right, but we went lobbying and ended up with enough money to get a lot of stuff done on 7 Highway. So, so it works.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why can't we put some here? We should be. All this stuff's going to go in here. This affects the National League of Cities and the Kansas League of Municipalities stuff. And yeah, we got all that in there. But for Shawnee too, maybe. If we can't do that, we can't do it. But I'm bringing it up.
Lisa. So there was one item that I asked be added to this that I haven't seen yet, but to the point about this idea that this is a legislative agenda, what this is supposed to be doing is outlining the laws that we want our legislature to change or to keep, whatever the case may be. And what you're talking about is really important, and that kind of work is really important, but I don't know that that goes to laws. So is there a way, maybe there's a way that we articulate those differently, or maybe there's a way that the council doesn't even have to articulate those at all because the staff is empowered to activate our lobbying resources when we have pet projects that we want funding for instance. But if it doesn't take an act of the full legislative body to change a law, then I don't think this is the document for it. And maybe I'm wrong, but please help me understand.
Is this for the legislative body or is this for our representatives? Our representatives.
Yeah.
It's a good clarification.
Yeah. It's a direction from Shawnee's legislature to give our general representatives direction when they go to Topeka with their larger group and discuss policy topics. That's as broad as I can get it.
Discuss the laws that they want to change that
Right,
impact
yes,
the
and
entire
set laws
state.
and policy, yeah. But they do set projects. I mean, that 43rd Street example is a specific project that they would either fund or not fund. So it really depends on how detailed this group wants to get. We can absolutely look at stuff like that.
Yep. We have a lot of, I'd say if we had a couple of, on our Christmas list each year, we had a couple of things there that we would really like to see. I don't see where there's any harm in doing that. It elevates it up a little bit.
No.
Highlights it for us. And of course, it's going to take a lot more work than that. It's going to take all the lobbying and all the other stuff. But it just kind of highlights, hey, out here in Shawnee, we sure love to see one of these or one of those or whatever. I don't know, it just seems like a good idea.
And so I would say kind of in terms of kind of what Kaylin's saying, kind of what you're saying is, you know, this is a kind of a broader representation of kind of that overall policy direction and laws and things that we want to keep or change from a, you know, state statute perspective. And it is broad in terms of talking about transportation. So then there's an opportunity for a transportation project to come up. Then we have our circulation plan that the council has seen. We have our CIP that the council has approved. And so then we have an opportunity to kind of get into more of those specific projects that then dovetail into this legislative agenda in terms of we support, you know, transportation planning, and then here's a project that the council has seen. So some of those things are in place, maybe just other documents that they can reference that allows staff the opportunity to engage our state delegation to pursue kind of those projects, and here's the stand. So it is kind of a balance, I think, to Councilmember Jenkins' point of essentially kind of staying fairly broad in terms of these topics, because to Kaylin's point, we don't know exactly kind of what that potential discussion may be in Topeka one way or the other, and so we have to have a little bit of flexibility to kind of maneuver within those parameters. So.
Okay. A couple weeks ago, I did ask for suggestions from the governing body for additions to the document that is in the packet tonight. I received two. The first one is regarding active transportation and promoting walking, biking, and expanded public transportation options. Came from Councilmember Constance. Would you like to elaborate any more?
Sure. I felt that this might add a little more clarity kind of around what Councilman Jenkins was saying, a little more specificity of might open up some grant opportunities, lead us into those kinds of conversations around some of our infrastructure projects. I also, you know, it links to some more of the regional 2050 transportation planning, you know, that focus on multimodal transportation, health, air quality, connecting communities, connecting people to jobs. So I just thought this was such an important area around infrastructure that it might be important to add some more clarity and, again, things that link to what is happening throughout our region with transportation planning. That's it.
Any further discussion from the council? Okay. The next requested item was from Councilmember Larson-Bonnell regarding the food tax. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, this was actually brought up last year by Councilmember Jenkins, I believe, and I fully support adding this to our legislative agenda. There was a wonderful article in the Wichita Eagle recently that talked about how Kansas has one of the highest food sales tax rates in the nation. And when I say food sales tax, we're talking about non-prepared food. So we're talking about grocery store taxes. This is a tax that affects all of our residents, although it doesn't affect all of our residents equally. It has a much more detrimental effect on our residents that are lower or fixed income residents because they have to spend a higher percentage of their earnings on this tax. And this is something that can directly impact all of our citizens. And I ask that the council agree to add this to our agenda. Eric?
Yeah, I would agree with both of the last two points of clarification, because like the active transportation one here that Lindsay put in there, it gives a little more specificity. I mean, I know you want to be vague and all that, but when you get so darn vague, it doesn't even mean anything, and that's kind of a problem. So I think a little specificity is good. And you already cited that I wanted this, so you know I'm going to support that. I'd love to see, that is such a regressive tax for our poor folks, and I guess, Ward 2, we get more than our share of the poor residents of Shawnee, and I'd love to see something like that for them.
Jim?
Yeah, I would agree on Lindsay's things. And then the food tax, in answer to Councilmember Brunel, we're not the only city, and everyone agrees that it's too high, it needs to come down. And, for what it's worth, state revenues are up $12 million over forecasts, and I'm sure that, because I hear about this all the time, if you can appreciate that. But this is very, very high on the list of the governor and a lot of legislators to bring this down. 6.5 is too high. And I know that it is a priority to do it, and I'm sure it will be addressed this time around. Whether it happens remains to be seen, but I know it's a very high priority this time.
Eric?
Yeah, just as something to throw in there for a suggestion. You wouldn't necessarily have to cover everybody. You could issue the red card or whatever. So if you're below this number on your annual income on your latest tax return or whatever, you'd be issued some sort of ID or whatever, some kind of card you could show it, and the tax would not be added into your grocery bill. So they wouldn't necessarily have to cut the entire funding stream off for the state, but they could still provide relief to those that are most in need of that relief.
Yeah, that's kind of why we kept the language as broad as we did. We actually originally, just internally, worded it to reduce the food sales tax completely. And so we kind of broadened that a little bit to just state established financial relief, because it could potentially be a voucher program or a card that's issued or whatever that looks like in the future. But I do know the governor is really interested in that. Okay, so are we good with adding both of these? Okay. If there are no other comments, our proposed 2020 state legislative program has these items. We can pull any off and discuss any of them, but they are all in your packet and have been communicated to you prior to this evening.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Caitlin?
One more slide.
Oh, okay.
We have a couple next steps. This will be a fast-tracked item to the December 9th City Council meeting. That is because the state's legislative session begins on January 13th, and we want to communicate the governing body's direction to our legislators prior to that, and with the holidays it's a little bit difficult. So we have started to schedule those meetings with those legislators, but we want to make sure that we're communicating the correct direction from our governing body, and then we'll start to have those meetings, and state session will begin on the 13th.
Eric?
Just one last comment. It's not in here, but maybe it's something we could think about putting it in here, is having the state address the issue of local elections and that hiatus period between when the election occurs and when people are seated, because it's caused a number of concerns by a lot of people that have been expressed to me at least, and maybe that's something we could have put in here as part of our legislative agenda. It just kind of hit me. So I was thinking, here we go, we're rushing this thing through. We got several new council people are going to be seated on January 13th, but they're not going to have anything to say about this. They're going to be there for the whole year. This is their agenda. It's already been done for them. So it'd just be, maybe it's something we could address and the state can address, because they kind of left us out to dry on that one when they changed things around with the
yeah, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago. They did change the statute that required council members to be seated on the second Monday in January, back to December 1st of the previous year. So we could change our charter, and it's something that we're going to discuss with the governing body at the 2020 governing body retreat, which will be held early in the year next year once we have our new council on board, to discuss potentially moving that up and changing our charter to an earlier December date rather than waiting until January.
Okay, so they already did December 1st. I wasn't even aware of that. So
yeah, December. It was last year or 2 years ago, I believe. They changed it from that January up to
We did receive an
December
email
1.
from Ellis explaining that the council had the option to adopt an earlier.
Somewhere, I don't know what it was.
We did not.
Didn't stick.
Yeah, we didn't have a discussion in this group, but it was just communicated by email.
Okay, so we could look at that internally then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we're going to address in our governing body retreat.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
All I got.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I would ask if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item. Seeing none, staff is recommending fast-tracking the 2020 state legislative program to the governing body for consideration at the December 9th, 2019 City Council meeting with a recommendation to adopt. The item is fast-tracked in order to schedule and meet with the state delegation prior to the holidays and the legislative session beginning in January. I will accept a motion.
I would move to fast track it as noted and with the changes that we spoke of.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, that concludes our agenda. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned.
We split it.